Watch out, road. You're about to get stomped on. With the next generation of ultra-high performance tire. For the modern muscle car, it's a new level of traction, stability, and wet braking capabilities. Step up to the all-new Nitto 555 G2. Check it out at nittotire.com. It's what's next.
Blog Talk Radio.
Howdy, race fans. How the hell are you? Glad you're tuning in to our final show of 2015. This will be this year's last episode of Racing with Big Sweat, and I'm your host, Steve Big Sweat Billmyer. Here as always, here to have a good time and talk some racing. Here with me in the studio, my usual cohort, man that calls the shots at 110 Nation Sports, and my good friend, Mr. CJ Sports. How are we doing this evening, CJ?
Oh, we're having a wonderful night. Looking forward to not only having the opportunity to bring in and listening to the new guy joining us tonight, but also be able to sit here and just kind of talk about our racing past and our racing background. And then to top that off, the fact that we got both shows together right now for the first time on a Thursday night. So very, very excited about tonight.
Yeah, that's going to be a cool deal. Our show teaming up with your show on the 110 Sports Nation. So I'm looking forward to that. I can stay on and get a little education about stick and ball that I don't follow as much as I should. And yes, you did mention we do have a new partner in crime that's going to be sitting in with us here at Racing with Big Sweat. Man is very familiar with the dirt racing scene out in the Midwest, and we're glad to have him here. I tell you, I think I can learn some things from him. The dude seems pretty sharp on this. Damion Bean, how you doing this evening, buddy?
I'm doing real good. How are you doing, sir?
I'm finer than frog's hair. We're here and we're happy. How's the weather out your way?
Well, winter finally arrived today. We've been having kind of seesaw weather patterns here for the last few weeks. We're ranging anywhere from the 50s to the 70s, and today I don't think it got much above 33, 34 degrees, so winter might be here, and I'm hoping for some snow for once this year.
There you go. We're still in the 70s, a little rain today, and they're calling for 70s and rain on Christmas Day, so that's kind of the usual weather pattern for the South. That's how we roll.
I'd take 70 over 30 any day.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier on the hands and such as that, but
Hell, it's easier on the electric bill.
Go ahead.
I said, hell, it's even easier on the electric bill.
Yeah, definitely so. My heat hadn't run in quite a few days, so that works out pretty good.
Yeah, mine kicked on today for the first time in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, I know that. But my daughter's in Alaska, and she's told me that it's they've had very little snow so far this year. It's been cold, but not much snow. If they don't get much snow,
we're locked into what's called a La Nina pattern right now. So the sea temperature out off the west coast is running above average, and that jet stream comes over us, picking up that warm moisture, and it's bringing up temperatures, across the country. That's been the reason it's been so mild this winter. So I'll take it any way I can get it.
Yeah, kind of makes you want to go ahead and start racing now. Go ahead and get the season started, but then again, here in the South, January and February are usually the cold, occasional snowy months. I saw where you're a track announcer. Where do you work at?
The track I announced at is recently closed down due to financial struggles, like a lot of racing is across the country right now. But the Montgomery Motorsports Park here in New Florence, Missouri. Real nice high bank 3/8 mile, nice and wide. It's probably 65, 70 feet from outside to inside, so you get really good 4, 5, 6 car wide racing at times. But yeah, the economy got a hold of them, and they shut down, and it's currently for sale. But I'm hoping somebody steps in and turns the lights back on, because that was an awesome facility to watch a race.
Yeah, a lot of tracks are having that problem now, fighting everything, trying to get as many butts in the seats as they can. That's why I'm a outspoken anti-cup race on Saturday night type dude, because I don't know much about how it is in other parts of the country, but here in the Southeast, if the cup race is on Saturday night, nobody comes out to the local tracks on Saturday night. Everybody's either at the cup race or they all get together at somebody's house and have race watching parties, but they won't support a program at the local short tracks, so none of the short tracks will schedule a show on Saturday night opposing the cup shows. It just doesn't work out, and last I heard, they were trying to move one of New Hampshire's dates to a Saturday night. They're ready to install lights and everything, and I heard they were going to take one of Richmond's night races and turn it back into a day race like it was years ago in the springtime. So who knows what's going to happen, but I hate to see progress at the expense of short track racing.
Yeah, we've definitely had enough problems with fan count being down and car count being down across the board pretty much everywhere you go. And yeah, like I lived in the Southeast for a little while myself in the Charlotte area, and you know what you were just saying hit the nail right on the head. You know, it would be a better deal if maybe some dirt tracks, you know, would schedule a race with, you know, in conjunction with a cup race, get a couple of the guys to come out there, and because a lot of, you know, NASCAR guys, you know, have history, you know, in dirt racing, so it wouldn't be, you know, a lot of these guys still go out and play in a dirt car on their weekends off, so, you know, that would be a good way, I think, to maybe get some fans in the seats at your local short tracks, is start running a little bit more of these races in conjunction with the cup races.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's quite a few cup guys out there running dirt race shows. The guys that don't go to the track, that stay home on the weekends. I had a buddy of mine that I worked at Hendrick Motorsports with, Michael Trevette, and Michael would tell you the only reason he worked Monday through Friday was so he could race on the weekends. If he couldn't race, he didn't want to work. I mean, that was the only reason he worked. But we went. I had a weekend off, and I went with him one Saturday evening. The dirt track in Lancaster, South Carolina. It's a pretty good sized track. It's close to Charlotte, Concord, Mooresville area, so you get a lot of the cup guys that race dirt track on the weekends would show up there. And so me and Michael show up, and we get there late. They're lining up the cars for his street stock heat race. So he's hustling to get in the car, and he's telling me as he's getting buckled up, he says, when they come over to ask you who's driving this car, you tell them and everything, okay? I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. So Michael starts the race dead last, and in about 5 laps, he's leading the race, and sure enough, here comes the track official. Wants to know who's driving that number 99 car. And I said, Steve Billmyer. And I spelled my name out for him and everything. Didn't have much of a gap between the heat race and the feature race, so we go to the feature race, and Mike's leading the feature by, 10 laps. He's in the lead. and I'm in the back of the tow truck, standing up hollering, "Go, Steve! Go, Steve!" There's guys I know over here from Hendrick Motorsports, and they're just looking at me, listening to the track announcer talking about, and Billmyer's leading them by 5 car lengths going down the backstretch. And it was hilarious. And then at the end of the night, we're going to the pay window. And Michael said, "Well, you told them who was driving and everything, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Good, I need that check." And I said, "Well," I said, "you didn't run worth a damn." I said, "But Steve Billmyer won the race." I said, "I know." And sure enough, we got to the pay window, and the winner's check was made out to me.
Made out to you? That's great.
So my race record is 1-0. I've ran one race from the back of a pickup truck, and I won it. That's in the extent of my dirt racing career. But we used to have a ton of fun doing stuff like that, racing short tracks. And as a matter of fact, later on, Michael drove my dad and mine's late model stock car for a year. So we all kind of stay connected.
Yeah, a lot of people that are, more into the pavement style racing, they just they don't understand how big dirt racing is. I mean, you pull up like a track directory of dirt tracks across the country, and there are so many of them just spread out, in all 4 corners of the country and everywhere in between. There's really not nowhere you couldn't be on a weekend where you wasn't within an hour's drive of a local short track. And I have another hobby as a storm chaser, and that's been really beneficial for me, as well as seeing a lot of new, venues for the first time. Is I could be traveling up to 800 to 1,000 miles a day, chasing a storm, and on my way home, always try to make it a point to visit new dirt tracks. And dirt track is big all over the country. I mean, I really wish that more people would get out there and support their local short track racing.
Yeah, I never really realized just how big dirt track racing was, because I've always been an asphalt guy, and that's pretty much the racing I followed. And I knew of some dirt tracks, local dirt tracks, but I never really sat down and realized just how big dirt track racing is in the Midwest.
It's huge all across the country. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to live. I've had jobs and schooling and all over the country, and there's never been, like I said, a place I could not be, from California to North Carolina, where there wasn't 2-3 tracks somewhere close that were running every weekend. I mean, it's just staggering the amount of you think you've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 to 1,500 dirt tracks across the country. It's not, you think that's at least 100 guys a night at each track. So you've got so many drivers and their fans, and the numbers are staggering compared to any other motorsport or sport that you'll ever find. Dirt track racing is huge. I mean, it's grassroots, it's nationwide, and you got your families involved and generations of drivers, and it's huge. People just don't understand how big it is.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I didn't realize just how big it was. I mean, asphalt racing is pretty much the king here in the Southeast, and there's dirt tracks here. But they don't draw the attention or the crowds that they do, on a weekly show out in the Midwest. I mean, the dirt track race the dirt track at Charlotte draws good. When the sprint cars and dirt late models show up there, that's a pretty big deal. But Cherokee, South Carolina is another place that they show up big, but it's kind of a selected number of real good dirt tracks.
Right.
Here in the East. My bucket list would be to spend 2 weeks in the Midwest during the summer in a motorhome, just going from track to track for a couple of weeks and visiting as many tracks as I could.
Well, a good way for you to do that would be come up this summer for the UMP Late Model Summer Nationals Tour. We call it the Hell Tour. I'm not exactly 100% on the numbers, so don't quote me on this, but it's like a month's worth of racing, and within that like 30, 31 days, you're racing like 25, 26 nights in like 6 or 7 different states. I mean, they call it the Hell Tour for a reason. I mean, it's in the dead of summer, it's hot, it's nasty, dirt's sticking to you, but it draws the people in droves. And I mean, if you've never been to a Summer Nationals race, or nobody listens has ever been to one, you should really check one out. I mean, the cars that show up, the quality, the talent, I mean, it's just, bar none, it's just one of the best shows you're ever going to see.
Yeah, it's a pretty strenuous tour. I was trying to think. I've had 2 guys that run that on the Racing with Big Sweat show, and one of them's a guy named Tim Ward that's based out of Arizona, but he races as far north as Minnesota and all up and down, kind of parallel to the Mississippi, all through the Midwest, and he runs that Hell Tour, and he says he really enjoys it. He said when the racing's good, the hecticness and as quick as you run one race and then the next race and then the next race. He said that part he likes. He said as long as he's running good. He said when you're running bad, it sucks being anywhere.
Yeah, that pretty much goes for any faction of motorsports. Never fun when you're not dialed in.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing worse is being at the racetrack and it's raining. We used to say there's the 2 worst places to be when it's raining is at the racetrack or at the beach. There's just nothing to do when it's raining.
Well, the pavement tracks are a little bit more forgiving to Mother Nature than the dirt tracks are. I mean, you guys got your jet dryers, and you can spend hours drying it out. Whereas a dirt track, I mean, if we get a good downpour, any more than 5 to 6 minutes, we're done for the night. I mean, you can't race in the mud. So that is Mother Nature, I would say, other than the economy, is the biggest hindrance to dirt racing. No matter where you go, you got a 50-50 shot whether Mother Nature is going to cooperate or not. And, you've also got to take into consideration, not only if it's raining that day, but how much has it rained in previous days. I mean, I've seen tracks around here in the last couple of years, in the Midwest, we get really unique weather patterns. Sometimes we'll have a really wet spring. Sometimes we'll have a really dry spring. Last few years, it's been just really, really wet up here in the springtime, and it lasts for months. And we've had some racetracks up here, like Tri-City Speedway in Pontoon Beach, Illinois. There's pictures of their racetrack on the internet, and it's a really, really big 3/8 mile, and there's a lot of land there, and there's pictures of it, and where it's just 6-7 feet of standing water. I mean, Peoria Speedway was completely underwater last year. There was a couple other ones that just succumb to Mother Nature, and when it comes to that, there's really not much we can do.
No, and I saw on a lot of people posted in my group, NASCAR and other racing, about the spring being so wet and so many races were postponed. People were sitting around for 3, 4, 5 weeks, waiting for dry Saturday so they could run. And it is a little bit easier on the asphalt tracks. We don't have jet dryers, though. We have like 9 truck tires chained together. You drag them around behind the wreckers, and that's how we drive the track down here. Sometimes you can get it dry. Sometimes it just rains you out. There's nothing you can do about it. But I guess when it hits y'all, that's what they're talking about when the track is heavy, I assume, when it's wet like that.
Yeah, generally early on in the night, track preparation will usually begin at any dirt track you go to, no matter whether it's a local show or whether it's a national touring show. They'll groom the track all week long. They're out there grading it, throwing water on it, depending on how much rain they get throughout the week. And race day, usually, depending on the size of the track, somewhere between 3 to 4 hours before, cars are set to qualify or do hot laps or whatever. They'll go out there and work the track, water it down, and it's usually heavy as, like you were saying, it's a heavy track where you get a lot of moisture in it. But the thing with dirt track racing, even though it's dirt and not pavement, pavement, throughout the day, hot, cold, affects the grip and everything on the track. Track conditions are just like that in dirt racing too. They're always changing. As you get more cars running more laps, it'll start to dry out that track, and it throws all that moisture up to the high side and creates a little bit of a cushion that could be anywhere from 2 to 3 inches tall to, as I've seen them at Jacksonville when the sprint cars run there, go all the way up the wall. So, a lot of these guys will get up there on that high side and plant the right rear in that moisture and go, whereas everything from the top down is, as slick as a button.
I heard that. That's one of the things I wanted to try to do during the off season was find somebody that is real good at prepping a dirt track and get them on this show and ask them questions and everything. It gives me a chance to ask stupid questions and use the excuse, well, I don't know much about dirt racing, but I really don't. And it would be it'd be a learning experience for me. I'd really enjoy that.
Hands down, if you want to learn and ask from the best track prep crew in the country, you would need to get a hold of the crew at Hobstadt, Indiana. I mean, that track, week in, week out, no matter if it's been dry, wet, it's perfect track conditions every single night. I've never seen a more consistent crew, be able to take whatever elements Mother Nature throws at them and still produce the same quality surface night in and night out. Phenomenal job.
Well, like I said, that's what I want to do is get somebody like that on the show and just be able to talk to them and listen to them and not expect them to give out any secrets, but to let on just what goes into prepping a track and how you learn to read it, so to speak, and everything. I just think that would be really cool.
Yeah, it's like anything. It's an acquired skill.
Yeah, definitely so. Then again, on an asphalt track prep is usually just running the sweeper around the track, and you spend more time painting tire marks and stuff on the wall than you do anything else as far as track prep goes.
Yeah.
So, how'd you get started in racing? What kicked this in gear for you?
Well, I like I said, I'm from the Midwest, and I'm really fortunate to live where I live, because the racing here, even on a local level, is, it's hands down some of the best you're going to find in the country every single week. And, it only takes once for, somebody to go to a good race at a young age where, as a kid, you're a sponge, and, when you see something or you experience something that really gets your blood flowing or excites you, you tend to hang on to it. And around here, there's no way you can let it go. The racing's just that good.
So were you young when you first got into racing, or when it attracted your attention?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think my earliest memories, I was, 3-4 years old. I can remember sitting in the dirt, on the back straightaway at Godfrey Speedway there in Illinois, playing on Matchbox cars, watching race cars go around the track. And, I mean, I actually, last year, or this year rather, was the first year I personally haven't made it to at least, I average probably 75 to 100 races per year. And, this year had a little bit of issues going on with my daughter, and we got that taken care of. So I didn't get to go to a race this year for the first time in probably 35 years. So it was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I can understand that. So was your family into racing at all, or was it just you? Well,
I mean, I didn't come from a racing background. Nobody in my Uncle Bob and my grandfather both dirt race and drag race, but I never got to see any of that. That was before my time. But no, it just so happened to be that, my parents were friends with people that were into racing, and that's kind of how it started. We just started going to the racetrack because, as my stepfather would have told you at the time, it wasn't that he liked racing; it's just that's where all his friends were. but for me, it stuck. I mean, it bit me hard. You know, it never goes away. It's like Dale Earnhardt always said, it's not something they put in you, and it's not something they can take out of you. It's just there or it's not.
Yeah, it's like they say too. Once the bug bites you, it just doesn't let go. And
that's absolutely true too. No matter what form of motorsports you happen to like, no matter if it's a stick and ball sport or motorsport, if you got the passion for it and the bug bites you, it's usually for life.
Yep, definitely so. So whereabouts are you located? What's home base for you?
I'm about 45 minutes to an hour west of St. Louis, more towards Columbia, Missouri, right there on I-70, and real good location for racing. I mean, there's plenty of racetracks around here to choose from. And we got some really, really good racetracks right here locally that draw some of the best talent in the Midwest every single week. I mean, I can't even begin to describe how good the racing here is. You got all these big late model guys that live right here in Illinois and Missouri that when they're not on a national, big money race, they're racing right here at home. I mean, they stick close to home, close to their roots, and you can drive anywhere from St. Louis 2 hours in any direction. You usually see a hell of a race every single night.
Well, there's been a lot of drivers from that area and that race in that area have gone on to bigger and better things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at Tony Stewart come out of this area. Once Jeff Gordon transplanted from the West Coast to Indiana, he went on the bigger. But, I mean, I remember watching Carl Edwards win his very first race in a dirt modified when I was like 10, 11 years old. He did that right here locally at a track I went to every single week. I've watched Jeff Gordon when he was, 18 years old, still running USAC, race right here locally a lot. Same thing goes for, Tony Stewart and Casey Kane. All these, Clint Boyer come from not far from here. There's just a lot of guys from this area that have really went on to be very successful and have amazing racing careers.
Yeah, the one I always think of is Larry Phillips. He was big, won a national title, one of the Winston Series titles, and he was just a really stout racer from what I read and everything. I never got to see him, but I heard about him and read about him a lot.
Yeah, he was a hell of a shoot, man. He's definitely a legend around here. I mean, there's not many people, that are into racing around here that haven't heard of that name. He's, like you said, he was really stout.
Yeah, definitely so. And the Wallace brothers have been through there. Kenny Schrader came out of that area.
Yes, sir. I mean, all these guys raced right here locally. I mean, before they went anywhere, it was kind of privileged. I got to grow up and watch these guys, before anybody ever knew who they were, and then to be able to see where they're at now, and it's like, wow. I've all my life growing up in racing, it's kind of cool because there's probably 15 to 20 guys that I don't just get to see, like if they make it to NASCAR and they spend a few years there, retire. I mean, I've been watching guys like Justin Allgaier. I watched him race dirt late models here with the big boys when he was a kid. The first time I met him, he was standing outside of his car with his driver's suit on, and he was so small that the arms of his driver's suit drug the ground behind him as he would walk.
Jesus. Well, that's pretty cool. It makes me think of one of the guests we got lined up for our next show, January 7th. I saw scanning through Facebook one day, I caught a glimpse of an article about the world's youngest racer. And it was this tiny kid in a go-kart, and he was 2 years old or something. I didn't
I saw
read
that
it.
picture.
I just kind of skimmed it and went on. And I got a friend request from this guy, and I friended him, and he was already in the group. And we got to chatting, and come to find out, it's this dude's son. And the son is 2 years and 9 months old and races a go-kart. I'm still checking to make sure this is true, because 2 years old seems way too young for me to drive a go-kart, but
man, that's
I'm
a
trying
lot of
to verify
responsibility.
this, and hopefully, if it's true, we're going to have the guy on January 7th, so I'll keep y'all posted.
2 years old, that's just incredible to think about. I mean, the first question that comes to my mind is, I mean, what did his father see, or what happened that made him think that his son could manage it? Because I saw the picture, and it's not when people think go-kart, they think a little cart that their kids are putting around in, but he's got a legitimate racing go-kart. And the thing that caught my attention about that picture is the kid sitting there in the car without a helmet with a pacifier in his mouth.
Same thing caught my attention.
I couldn't believe it.
In his fire suit and everything, and got a pacifier in.
Did you happen to notice, too, that he had that look of pure focus and determination on his face? He wasn't all starry-eyed like normal kids looking around with, their imagination. That kid was focused.
Yeah, but I'm like you. I'm going to ask his dad, what made you think your 2-year-old son could drive anything?
Yeah.
Other than a Hot Wheel on the carpet, that's about all he's going to be able to drive. When I was 2 years old, I was pretty much just picking my nose and kind of walking around. Here's this kid's out racing a go-kart. So, like I said, I'm going to try to check into it some more, and if it comes up solid, we got him lined up for January 7th.
I'm going to dig around on the internet and see if I can find some kind of video and see if we can get some video evidence of this. And because I kind of like to see that. It's still just, I don't know, my little girl's 4, and I got plans for her to jump in a quarter midget, but 2 years old? Wow.
Even if I had a 2-year-old son that showed an interest in cars and everything, I still wouldn't strap him in a car. I still wouldn't strap him in a go-kart. I mean...
Yeah. And the thing about it is the go-karts that we're talking about here, folks, it's not one of the ones that has a full enclosed cage to protect the kid like a quarter midget or something like that does. This is an open go-kart. I mean, I don't even think there's lap belts in those cars, because I've driven quite a few of them, and I've never come across one that had a seat belt in it. So, I've got some questions.
Yeah, and don't get the wrong idea, people. This father and son duo lives in Italy. They're not in the United States. I don't think anywhere in the United States would sanction you racing your 2-year-old son in a go-kart class, but in Italy things might be different. I don't know, but we're going to try it out anyway.
And don't get the wrong impression, folks. I'm not saying that I think there's bad parenting involved or anything like that. It's just if the little man can legitimately go out there and wheel that car, hey, great, I'm all for it. But man, like I said, I have to know what it was that made him even think putting my kid in this car.
Yep. I just can't figure it out. But
you know who we haven't heard a peep out of this whole time, don't you?
Who's that?
The other man here on the line with us hasn't said a word.
My buddy, sports.
I'm listening to you guys. Between trying to, I had difficulties on the other side, trying to fix that, and of course my Cleveland Cavaliers are playing at the same time, and listening to you guys all say. I'm multitasking here. I just ain't saying nothing.
Yeah, he's producing our stuff, and we're in the process of being picked up by a larger network and broadcast to more stations. So another thing, when we come back after the first of the year, we'll be bigger and stronger then, and we'll try to have more going on for you here on Racing with Big Sweat. Tonight would be a good night if you just want to call in and make a comment about what we're talking about, or if you just want to give a shout-out to somebody, your cat or your grandmother's cat or something like that. It doesn't matter who. But if you call in, we'll send you some of the great-tasting, all-natural seasoning blend called Snafu Seasoning. This is some good stuff, and you need to try it. And if you want to try it, all you got to do is call in and just say, hey, and that's all it takes. Leave us your name and address, and we'll send it right to you. So call us at, the number is 718-664-9861. I get lost because I'm trying not to sound like a redneck.
You guys are talking
y'all
about
can understand what numbers I'm saying. I'm trying to help y'all out.
When you guys were talking about the 2-year-old, all I could sit there and think the whole time is the fact that, I have a daughter from the prior relationship. She's not biologically mine, but she's mine. And I've known her since she was 2 years old. And then, of course, I got a 9-year-old son, and then now I'm in a current relationship that has a 4 and a 5-year-old that they were 2 and 3 when I met them. And the only thing I can sit there and think to myself is 2 years old. I know what all 4 of these kids were like at 2 years old and how they were unable to basically walk from one end of the house to the other end without tripping on themselves, tripping on something, running into something, smacking their face on the ground.
Exactly.
So to know that what I've experienced with 4 kids, and to try to imagine a kid that age out there in a go-kart and keeping it on the track. I couldn't imagine the 4 and 5-year-old that live with me now. Imagine them taking a go-kart and keeping it on the track. So I'm sitting there as you guys are talking. I'm trying to visualize how do you train a 2-year-old to do this, because I know what it was like 4 times prior to what it's like to have a 2-year-old in the house.
Yeah, I mean, there are those rare occasions out there where in any kind of sport you find where there are just God-made prodigies, and the parents just are able to realize this at a young age, and they can start their career from a very young age. I mean, if you look in the NHL, most of these guys, and I myself included in that, I was skating from a very early age. There are some guys that are playing in the NHL, a lot of guys that aren't, that are able to skate and stand up on skates before they can even walk. I mean, some parents just groom their kids. They see something, or maybe they're trying to vicariously live their dreams through their children, and they start grooming them in a very young age. But, I've always said from, the time my little girl was a couple of days old that, she's going to be the first NHL female goalie to ever play the game. So, I am with you guys. 2 years old. I mean, you got to think about this. I mean, even at 2 years old, what was he driving before he was able to jump into this go-kart? He had to have some kind of practice in something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was living with my brother, his son was about that age, and he would ride a push cart. It's one you just pushed with your feet. But my brother lived in an older style farmhouse with real wide doors and a long hall and everything. But Jack could come down the hall, make a loop through the living room and up through the dining room and around the den, and then come back down the hall. He had a lap he could run, and he got where he was hauling butt on his little push cart. I mean, he was flying. But never once did I think, Well, hell, he's ready to drive a go-kart now. I mean, thought just didn't cross my mind, and I want to find out what made this guy think, my son can drive.
I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, that's the great thing about doing this show. We get them all.
So I have an interesting question for you. I mean, you and I were talking the other day about, some of what we had done with racing and all that, and you had mentioned that you done a lot of work with Harry Hyde. What was that like? I mean, Harry Hyde, it's just a legend. I mean, you say you worked with him, side by side for years. I mean, what was that like? I mean, how much did you learn from that guy?
Well, pretty much all I know about racing I learned from Harry Hyde, the majority of it. I mean, not so much the mechanical stuff, but racing in general, track savvy and things like that. I learned from Harry, and Harry wasn't, I wouldn't say he was politically correct or all that polite either. I mean, Harry was pretty rough around the edges, much more so at the track than he was away from the track, and I was lucky that we got to be pretty good friends, and I would room with him sometimes on the road, share a motel room with him. And at the track, it was nothing but yes, sir, no, sir, and do everything his way. But get back in the motel room, and I could ask him then, why did we change that spring, or why did we do this, or why did we do that? And he would give me a detailed explanation why, and that's a lot of how I learned, was just asking questions and sitting there and listening. And then when I left Hendrick Motorsports and went on my own with my dad and our own team, and I had to do everything, I started putting to use what I had heard and what I'd learned, and that gave me a basis to learn from. And I became a crew chief before the computer age. Didn't have a program where we could punch in, it's tight, enter in the corner and tight in the middle and a little loose off and get an answer.
Back then it was all about knowing what your car was capable of and paying attention to what it did the week before.
Yeah, I couldn't do it on a computer, but I can walk down in the corner, right in the middle of the corner, and watch the car come in the corner and go through the corner and get off the corner and just look at the stance of the car and what the left side tires are doing and what the driver's doing, and pretty much know what he was doing, how the car was handling, and then go back to the pit, talk to the driver, confirm it with him and the tire temperatures and the shock travel. And that's how I learned. I could do it visually. I got no idea how to do it on a computer, but visually I know how to do it.
Yeah, I've noticed, especially here, locally in some of the bigger traveling series, with the dirt guys, is like you were saying, back then before the computer age, you really had to be hands-on with your car and just be really familiar with it and, what it was. And you see that a lot in dirt racing. I mean, these guys will pull into the pits, jump out of their car, and they're immediately, turning wrenches and underneath the car, changing this, changing that, whereas in NASCAR, you only see the guy standing in the garage with his hands on his hips watching everybody else do the work for him.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it is. I've been involved with a couple of drivers like that. And
I've always been under the impression that a driver that was more hands-on with his car and knew and could tell from the driver's seat what his car what he needed and what he wanted, it would just be easier for him to not so much do it himself, nothing like that, but for him to be able to get, hands-on with his car. And, I've always thought that made for a better race car driver versus ones that don't.
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, if you got a driver that knows his car from one end to the other, he can pick up subtle vibrations and strange noises and stuff like that and be able to analyze it and get a good idea of what it is and how it needs to be addressed, which is a lot of what driving by the seat of your pants means. You learn to feel what the car is doing, and
Yep.
it gives you just a total better understanding than somebody, like a couple of drivers that I had, that all they wanted to do was show up at the track 5 minutes before practice and jump in their driving suit and get in the car and go run practice and then go hang out with their buddies and, just disappear if they weren't actually driving the car. And needless to say, they didn't really have a clue on what their car was doing, or, even really being able to relay what the car was doing so I could try to figure it out. And that's what made Harry Hyde and Tim Richmond work so well. Tim was like Cold Trickle in Days of Thunder. Tim didn't really understand what loose and tight meant or changing a spring did or stuff like that. But he had the ability to tell Harry what that car was doing, and Harry would take that information and decide if he needed to change a spring or something like that. Yeah. I remember distinctly one time when we were at Charlotte, and Tim had gone somewhere while we were working on the car between practices, and he came back, and Harry was explaining to him that we had changed the spring and why we did it and what the car was going to do. And Tim just kind of held his hand up and interrupted him and said, Harry, if you'll just make it turn at the end of the straightaways, if you'll just make it turn left, I'll take it from there. And that was pretty much his racing style. Harry could do anything he wanted to, just as long as that car would turn left at the end of the straightaway. And that was all Tim needed.
Now, you mentioned Cole Trickle there. You had told me the other day that you did some work on the movie Days of Thunder there. What was your role there? Were you like a consultant or something like that?
Yeah, we were listed as technical advisors, but our biggest job was, I was working at Hendrick Engineering at the time, and we built 5 race cars for that movie, full-on race cars that we used to get in-race shots and stuff. And all the other cars in that movie were show cars that were bought from other teams and everything, and reskinned to look like newer model cars and stuff. But our biggest job was keeping the stunt drivers out of those 5 race cars. They just knew if they could just get in and show somebody they could really drive a race car, that they could be better than Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. The Greg Sachs would drive those cars in the camera shots they needed and stuff for the movie. And we'd warm the car up and set the air pressure and get everything done, get it ready to go out, and then kind of check it over and everything when it came back in with it and when they were done with it. But the majority of the time, we had to sit watch over those cars to make sure those stunt drivers didn't mess with them.
I've heard rumors before that the movie Days of Thunder, the relationship between Harry Hyde and Cole Trickle was loosely, if not entirely, based on the relationship between Harry Hyde and Tim Richmond. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was modeled on, with Tim and Harry. There were some Jeff Bodine incidents in there, and one of the true incidents is where they're eating ice cream in the pits and don't want Cole Trickle to come in. Well,
That really happened?
Yeah, that was with Benny Parsons when he was filling in for Tim. But yeah,
one of the funniest parts of the movie, and to find out that's true was great.
Yeah, we were somewhere, and Harry had bought everybody ice cream from one of those people pushing around the ice cream truck. And just as soon as we had got it, the caution came out, and Benny's on the radio like, "What do you want to do, Harry? 2 tires or 4?" And Harry's like, "Well, we're not going to do nothing. We're having ice cream right now, so there's no need for you to come in." we did. We must not have been running that good anyway that day, but
then I got to ask: is the whole line where he tells them to hit the pace cars? They want them to be perfect. Is there any relation to that, or was that just something made up through the movie?
No, that was the Tim Richmond deal.
Oh, I got to hear about that. Who was that about?
Well, he told that to Tim Richmond. I don't remember what race it was, but I can remember hearing it. Well, out there and hit the damn pace car.
I love that movie, and for anybody that's a gearhead and owns racing movies, that was definitely one of the first high-budget films to really document any form of motorsports. But I love that movie, and to hear these stories and to know that some of my favorite parts in this movie they actually happened, that just makes it even better. I'm going to have to watch it whenever we're done with this and just laugh a little harder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things in it that I was lucky enough to experience and everything, and to see him come back in the movie. And
now,
when
how
the
close
movie
did Robert
first
Duvall
came out, we all thought it was kind of hokey, kind of like Top Gun, because of the stuff like building the car in Harry's garage where you can see daylight between the boards and stuff like that. You know, racing wasn't like that then, but being able to see little parts of it that I had seen before, that was good stuff, though.
How close did Robert Duvall get to nailing how high it really was?
Pretty close as he could, but Harry was a bit rougher, a bit gruffer than Robert Duvall portrayed him in the movie. Harry was fighting in World War II when he was 15, lied about his age to get in, and went through the Army and everything. And Harry pretty much ran that race team like an Army deal, too. Number one, he didn't have a bit of problem telling you it's my way or the highway. I mean, that's just it was. If you didn't want to do things Harry's way, you might as well go ahead and leave, because he was going to fire you soon enough. And once I learned that, I didn't have any problem getting along with him. I just shut up and did what I was told. And Harry had the race team at the track set up where everybody had a certain job to do, and you didn't jump in and help somebody do their job unless everything about your job was caught up. I was tire tech. I did all the tire work. So if the car came in and they were going to change a shock or a spring or gear or something, I just got out of the way. I didn't help. Wasn't my department. I went and made sure the tires were aired up and took notes and things like that. And that's the way Harry ran things. If he said, let's put on another set of tires, well, nobody ran over to those tires but me to pick them out and everything. But it worked. It got everything done, and it kind of limited your exposure to the rest of the car. And I learned real quick just to stand back and listen and watch what they were doing, and I learned a lot just listening and watching.
Yeah, you got one of the best teachers you could have possibly asked for. I mean, learning from definitely one of the best in the business. I mean, obviously that had to really transfer over when you started doing your own late model deal there.
Yeah, Yeah, a little bit too much so because I've turned out to be just as intense as Harry was at the track. I mean, Harry was real competitive and just real focused at the track, and I've always been that way too. I've been told I was aloof and everything because I didn't socialize much with people at the track, and I'm like, I got shit to do. I ain't got time to socialize.
I'm not here to make friends.
Yeah, exactly. Mine are right over here in my truck. So, but that's just the way. That's just the way it was. That was the way I learned to do things, and I got real lucky because Harry was way ahead of everybody else as far as tires and how tires worked and everything you needed to know about tires, Harry pretty much had experience with. Back then, Goodyear had to beg teams to go do tire tests. Nobody wanted to do a tire test because you're out there all day and it's kind of boring and yada, yada, yada. We went on every tire test Harry could get us on. Anytime there was a Goodyear tire test, we would volunteer to go because Harry looked at it like, well, they're testing tires for when they're coming here to race. I might as well work on my setup while I'm here.
Yeah.
And plus, it gave us a little bit of an advance on how the tires were working. It really helped me. It got me closer to the engineers, and I got to talk to them a lot at the track and everything. So being the tire man and working with Harry really helped me learn real fast about tires. And
and on any kind of pavement racing that you do, man, the tire guy, that's the one I always felt the most sorry for because, folks, you got to understand when you're out in the middle of the summer, and that asphalt's 140, 150 degrees, and these guys are flying down the straightaway and getting hard on the brakes down in the turn. When those tires and wheels come off that car, they are so hot, and you immediately have to check your pressures, look at your tire wear, look for punctures, any kind of discrepancy with the tire. You can't sit and let it cool off. It has to be done immediately, and those poor guys that sweat on any asphalt team that do tires and y'all got my respect.
Yeah, and that's the thing about tires on asphalt cars. You get the tire temperatures when the tires are the hottest as you can get to them. And you learn to read the tire temperatures, and they'll tell you everything the car is doing. They'll tell you whether the car's loose or tight or whether it's plowing the front end and the corners or what the car is doing. And, that's the big thing. If you're the tire man, you have to deal with them tires when they're hot. But you just kind of get over it. You learn to deal with it, and that's just the way it is. All we had then, now they have special gloves and everything that are heat resistant and all that. And all we had were baseball batter gloves. So they didn't keep the heat out very much, but they were better than nothing.
Excuse me.
Yeah, speaking of hot tires, when we won the first race at Martinsville, when it was All-Star Racing, now it's Hendrick Motorsports, but back in the day, we won that race at Martinsville, and this will show you how sharp Harry Hyde was on tires. Goodyear came around Sunday morning. Well, they didn't come around. They printed it on a dry erase board at the tire shop that the truck had broke down on the way to Martinsville from Ohio, and the truck wasn't going to get there, and it was full of left side tires. So they didn't have any left side tires. They had sold out. So whatever left side tires you had were the left side tires you were going to have to race with. And I think everybody had like 4, maybe 5 sets of complete tires. And, you know, Martinsville, especially back then, you knew it was going to be more than 5 cautions. So Harry decided, we talked about it, and we were going to use 2 left front tires the whole race. We'd start on the left front we qualified on. In the first pit stop, we changed 4 tires. We take that left front tire we took off, pour water on it to cool it off, lug it back up, put it back up on the wall with 3 sticker tires to put on at our next stop. And then the next stop, we take that left side tire off, pour water on it, cool it off, lug it back up. And we alternated those 2 tires all day. And the pouring the water on it to cool it off also hardens the tire, hardens the compound up.
Yep.
So that would keep the tire from wearing more. And we ran the whole race like that, got down to like 30 laps from the end. They had a caution. We all come in, and everybody else, all they can do is put on 2 sticker right side tires and 2 scuff left side tires that they've already run. And hell, we still had left side tires left. We put 4 sticker tires on, and we led the last 30 laps or so. And I mean, we didn't lead it by a little bit. We led it by half a straightaway when we won the race. But that's how sharp Harry Hyde was, and that's how you overcome a problem and still end up with a good race. And that's a lot of what I learned from Harry just by being a tire man.
Yeah, he even made the line in that movie, tires is what wins a race.
Exactly. That was what he stressed to me was, you know, the tires are the only thing holding the car on the track. That if the tires ain't right, it doesn't matter springs or shocks or anything else. If the tires aren't right, you aren't going to run good.
No.
I'll tell you how I got to be the tire man for Harry. I was working for Hendrick Automotive, the parent company that Rick Hendrick has for all his car dealerships and stuff. And I was working for him there, and I heard through the grapevine that he was building a stock car, that he was thinking about running a few races. So that kind of got my interest. I'd been around race cars pretty much all my life with my dad racing. And the next time I got a chance, I asked Rick if I could transfer from Hendrick Automotive over to the race team. And he said yes. So I was the 4th person that went to work. Then it was JRH Racing, and then All-Star Racing after that, and then Hendrick Motorsports. But I was the 4th person there. And I'm walking through the shop the first day talking to Harry, and he's asking me, well, can you do paint and body work? And I'm going, no, can't do that. And he said, can you do motor work? And I'm like, no, can't do that. And you do metal fabrication, welding? I'm like, no, can't do that. So I'm running out of things to agree to. And I look over in the corner, and there's a tire changing machine sitting over there. And I spent 5 or 6 years before I went to work for Rick in the tire business, changing tires all day and stuff. So I told Harry, I said, pointed at that tire changing machine, I said, I can make that thing sing. And he kind of looked at me. He said, can you read a tape measure? And I said, yeah. Can you add and subtract fractions in your head? And I said, yeah, no problem. He said, well, by golly, you're going to be the tire man. And that's how I got started in it. and I stuck with it. I was there 9 years at Hendrick Motorsports, and that was pretty much my main function.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough job for any race team as a tire man, because there's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot more than just putting air in the tire. Like you said, I mean, you can tell everything that car's doing by how the tire's wearing, the chatter marks that are on it, and you can tell how much camber it's got in it by the sidewall. I mean, there is a lot of knowledge and know-how that goes into making a set of tires right. So, like I said, you guys played just a bigger part of any race team as the guy sitting in the seat when it comes to getting the car from start to finish.
Yeah, even if I had a driver that was telling me the car was loose, if the tire temperatures are showing tight, I'm going to argue with him and tell him, well, no, it's not loose. It's not like you're describing or anything. I can give you an idea of how that deal works. I got Timothy Peters, the Camping World Truck Series driver. I got him out of a Legend car when he was 15 and put him in my late model stock car and started racing him. And Timothy, being new to racing and everything, but having a hell of a lot of talent, was doing pretty good. And we had gone to Myrtle Beach for a big late model race they used to have down there the weekend before Thanksgiving. And it would draw 110 cars on up to try to qualify for 36 spots in the race. They only took 20 on time. So it's pretty stiff competition. And here I am showing up. My driver's got to have his mom and dad drive him to the racetrack so he can race. He's not old enough to get a driver's license yet. And we go down there, and we end up, we're working on the car, and he's hollering, it's loose, it's loose, it's loose coming off, it's loose. And we keep tightening it up, and he says it's not changing or anything, and we do something. And I walk down in I was closest to turns 1 and 2, so I walked down the apex of 1 and 2 where I could see him. And he'd come down into the corner, and by the time he got to the middle of the corner, that white piece of tape that drivers put at 12 o'clock on the steering wheel to know when their wheels are straight ahead, you couldn't see it. He had the wheel turned so far to the left because the car was so tight that when it finally did turn, it would whip the back end around, and he felt, like it was loose.
Yeah.
We got that figured out, got the car loosened back up, and he qualified 19th out of, 115, 116, 17 cars. Never seen the track before. Didn't have iRacing or anything in where he could practice. But he just showed up and put his foot in it and did what he had to do. We had a pretty good time there. One of the best times I had with Timothy, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Now, I know you had Jimmy Johnson drove his first NASCAR race for you, too. I mean, could you tell with him right away that he was going to go somewhere?
He had good instincts and everything, but no, I didn't look at him and think, well, this guy's going to be a 6-time champion of Cup racing. But I think he drove 8 races for us before he went north to run ASA, and had never been in a stock car before, but drove those 8 races, didn't put a scratch on the race car. I mean, never got it in trouble. I think he only spun it out once, maybe twice. But, I mean, he did a real good job. I mean, I could tell he had talent. I didn't know that he had enough talent to be a multi-time champion, but I could tell he had some driving talent.
I think a lot of those championships really was the contribution from Chad Knaus too. I mean, a lot of people, may think, just look at Jimmy Johnson and think that, he's just that good. Well, Chad Knaus was just that good too. That was an amazing duo right there. It's probably one of the best we've seen, in history, outside of, Richard Petty and his crew chief, and we've had a couple of guys that have made really good pairings, but those two together it was just magic.
Yeah, the thing I've always felt about Jimmy and Chad is Jimmy could come on the radio during a green flag run and tell Chad in a calm voice, Chad, I got a meteor on my hood. And Chad would just come back on just as cool and calm and say, don't worry, we'll fix it next caution. I mean, those guys don't get rattled about anything. Every now and then you'll hear Jimmy lose his cool a little bit with Chad, but Chad will keep an even keel and it'll calm Jimmy back down and everything.
Yeah.
So, they just work amazingly well together. They've turned out to be a really good team.
It doesn't happen very often. I mean, you got guys out there that are proven champions in, some other form of motorsports. I mean, they had to be very, very good at what they do to get to the level that they are now. But, sometimes you could take a driver that is just destined for greatness and, it's kind of like a stick and ball athlete. You could be a number one draft pick, the Heisman winner or something like that. If you don't go to the right team, you're not going to have the opportunity to put your skills and your talent to use, and you're just going to be another one of those guys that everybody just kind of looks at and goes, so the combination has to be right.
Yeah, a prime example of that was Darrell Waltrip and Waddell Wilson being his crew chief when they were at Hendrick Motorsports, and there was just, too much ego there. You got two giant egos on one team, and there just ain't enough ego room for both of them. Yeah. And that's the same thing that happened with Jeff Bodine and Harry Hyde. Jeff Bodine is probably the smartest race car driver I ever worked with. I mean, that dude really knows a race car top to bottom and how it works and how to make it work and everything. And him and Harry would butt heads a lot over what course of action to take, especially during the race. If Harry wanted to change the air pressure in the stagger and Jeff wanted to put rounds in the spring or something, they'd have some arguments, and I think that more than anything, as much as anything, might have been what got Rick Hendrick to decide to run two teams, just so he could split Harry and Jeff up and not lose both of them.
He definitely had the capital to do it.
Yeah, but, and like I said, that might be why Harry and Tim work so good together, because, Tim didn't know enough to argue about a setup or anything, so it was just blind trust on his part. And then he found out, he could blindly trust Harry and not worry about it. And that's when things clicked on the second half of the season, and that's when he really tore it up then.
Yeah, Tim, we were talking about Tim the other day, you and I, and, I made the comment that Tim Richmond had, something that, he just had that God-given gift, and like you said, for a guy that didn't know anything really about what a race car was capable of or what it could do or anything of that nature, he could drive, and that guy had so much raw talent. It was just, that was such a sad way to, see all that come to an end.
Yeah, when you see a guy go from Indy cars to stock cars, to be able to drive both of those and midget cars and super modifieds and pretty much anything open wheel and be able to drive a stock car. That dude's got some talent more than anything else. I mean, there's a lot of that you just can't learn. You just have to experience it and experience it again to help you, but it's not something you can go to a book and learn or learn from another driver or something like that.
No. Of the drivers that we've got out there now, I've always said that I see a lot of Tim Richmond and Tony Stewart. I mean, they come from the same background. I mean, they've driven the same kind of cars. One of the few people to actually go from an Indy car to a stock car and have success, whereas we've seen, quite a other few drivers that have come out of Indy or some other form of open wheel and go to a full-bodied, heavier stock car and last a few seasons and go right back to where they came from because that's what they're comfortable with. But whereas these two guys, they can get in anything, it doesn't matter what it is, and go out and be competitive, and that's really hard to find.
Yeah, it is. Those guys that you just give them anything with 4 tires and a gas pedal, and they'll race it, and they'll do a good job of it. You ever get hooked up with one of those kind of drivers, that's somebody you need to stick with because he's got the talent, he's got the gift.
Yeah, for sure. I think another one kind of like that, talking about car setups and how crew chiefs, think a driver needs to tell him how a car needs to be and how he wants it and to make it work. You look at a guy like Kyle Busch, he's another one of them. He can, if the car's not 100% right, if the car's 75%, he'll make up that extra 25% by himself. I remember having a crew chief or a conversation with Roger Bracken. Don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was the kind of guy that he wanted to sit down with the driver, before they even went out to practice, and he would tell the driver, it kind of like, Harry, it's my way. This is how I'm going to set up this car. All I want you to do is tell me how it feels, and that's hard to find. That's raw talent that is just, you're born with it. You can't get it anywhere else.
No, and the only thing, I kind of did something similar like that. I didn't sit down and have a meeting with my drivers or anything like that, and this was another thing I picked up from Harry Hyde. When I'd show up at the track with my late model, as soon as we got the car unloaded, I would get the driver and we would walk a lap around the track and just talk about racing, talk about girlfriends, talk about anything. But we just talk and just kind of get on the same wavelength as we walk around the track and look at the track and look at, ruts and humps and things like that. But it would just give us time to connect, try to get on the same wavelength before practice started and everything. So I wasn't that by the book rigid set in my ways, but that was one thing I always felt important was having a little one-on-one time meeting with the driver before everything started, because once it started, you weren't going to have that opportunity again. So,
yeah, right.
Especially with, younger rookie drivers and stuff. Timothy Peters was an example, a 15-year-old, and, we're walking around the track, and we're talking about his girlfriend or spring break or just anything that was on his mind besides racing is what we talk about. But it would get him in the right frame of mind, and that was what I was trying to accomplish.
So we got the Chili Bowl coming up. What do you think about that?
That's another one of those bucket list races of mine. Until I started my group, I didn't realize what a big deal that was. I had heard of it, but I never really realized, up until the past couple of years, just what a show it really is and what it means and everything.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, you got for you that don't know what the Chili Bowl is. I mean, it's turned into quite the Daytona 500 of dirt track racing. It's you got drivers from every form of motorsports, from Formula One to Indy to NHRA to NASCAR to dirt track regulars. I mean, it draws everybody. Tony Stewart's won it several times actually, and you got Casey Kane usually comes and runs every year. Ryan Newman. I mean, we've seen guys like Cruz Pedregon from the NHRA come out and drive. So far this year, I think they've hit around 250 entries, if I'm not mistaken. You got five countries are represented so far. Drivers from 31 different states. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I was just amazed. Last year, I really got into it and really followed it. And, just the amount of competition and the level of competition that shows up there. I had heard of it before as kind of a side note with Tony Stewart. They'd be talking about him, and they'd mention that he had won the Chili Bowl, had multiple wins there or whatever. But until I actually started following it, I never realized it was that big. And, I read somewhere, too, where there was around 250 entries so far.
Yeah, and it's so competitive out there year in and year out that I've actually seen races, where Tony Stewart's been there and been expected to win and not even make the show, just be beat out by, a 15, 16-year-old kid that you've never heard of before from, some cornfield town in Iowa. It happens. It's that competitive.
Yeah, it can happen to you real quick there, but like I said, that's one of the bucket list tracks I've got. I'd love to go down there and spend that week just absorbing the whole scene and watching all the racing and everything.
It's kind of like walking into Eldora Speedway for the first time to experience it. It's just one word. It's just overwhelming. I mean, there is so much going on and so many cars, and you could just walk around the pits all day and never even look at the racetrack and just find something new and interesting to see at all times. And the fact that it's an indoor show, I mean, for people that don't know what a midget is it's a little smaller version of a non-wing sprint car, all aluminum, 4-cylinder engine in it, and these things are evil little machines. The throttle response from the weight to horsepower ratio is just overwhelming. As soon as you mat the gas, these cars come to life. And little bitty indoor track, short straightaways, tight turns, and you get a full feature field out there of these guys. Watch them when they start running, and it is amazing. It's like jet planes in a gymnasium.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that's something else I need to work on. We need to get a couple of drivers in here that are going to that. And
I can make that happen for you, buddy. I got a couple of friends that go down there and race every year.
Well, good. I'd like to talk to a couple of them before they go to find out, what they've done as far as pre-race prep and everything, what they're doing to get ready, and then maybe talk to them after the week down there and find out how they did and get them to talk about their experience. That would be a cool deal.
Yeah, you talk about their preparations to go. I mean, it's just like the big NASCAR teams. They've got cars that they work on specifically all year long for, Daytona or a big race or something like that. Well, these teams are the same way. They've got 4 or 5 cars in their shop, and there's one of them sitting in a corner just being rubbed with a diaper that's being prepared for this one race, and that's the whole purpose of that car's life, is to go win the Chili Bowl. That's how big this race is.
Yeah, it's definitely something that can launch your career.
Definitely.
So, yeah, let's work on that. Let's get a couple of drivers in here
okay.
for the show that week and see who we can get lined up and get some info from. Because I like to talk to people that are going to find out. That's how I learn.
Yeah. Well, we got a few. The Chili Bowl is the week of January 12th through the 16th in Tulsa, the River City Expo Center. So usually sells out. So if you want to get a ticket, you might be SOL. But MAV TV will be carrying the final night of racing live. So check your satellite and cable providers and check out something that will probably hook you for life.
What do they do on the first night?
First few nights they have practices down there, and guys get to go in. And, so the thing of that is for them to shake their cars down, make sure all the nuts and bolts are tight, and things like that. To check out the track surface, make sure it doesn't start to pull apart or anything like that, because this is an indoor facility, and it starts off as a concrete floor, and it takes them a couple of days to bring in truckloads full of dirt to even make this possible. I mean, they basically take an outdoor track and they bring it inside. So, but they'll have that first night for practice, and the reason it has to run for so long is you have so many cars that are showing up for this. I mean, you got anywhere from 15 to 20 heat races a night, and you can go have 5 or 6 C mains, B mains before you get to the feature, and they take points from each night throughout the week, and they keep track of the winners and how many points you get, and that's how you make it to the final night of the Chili Bowl. And you go from there. Just to make it to that final night for a lot of people is just a dream accomplishment, because there's been some of the best in the business that don't make it, and it's just, I don't know, it's a week of, it could make you or break you. It could be a dream weekend for you, like you said. Win a Chili Bowl is launch people's careers.
Yeah, you like you said, it's a make or break deal, and you can really make a mark doing good and winning there. And like I said, we need to get somebody on that's going down there so I can pump them for more information. I didn't know that about how you qualified through the week and everything. So, see, I learned something. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you being on and jumping on the team with us, Damion. I'm really looking forward to sitting down and talking with you on Thursday nights on Racing with Big Sweat. I think between the two of us, we can come up with enough quality local drivers to put on some good shows week in and week out. But anybody that's listening, if you know somebody you think should be on our show that deserves a shout out or something like that, just send me a message. Message me at Facebook group NASCAR and Other Racing, or message me at Facebook group Racing with Big Sweat, or message me at 110 Nation Sports fan page. Just if you know somebody you think they ought to be on, let me know and I'll put them on. That's what we're trying to do, is promote short track racing as much as we can. Thanks again, Damion, for sitting in with us. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to us working together here through the season.
Oh, not a problem. I'm looking forward to the opportunity at hand. And before we get out of here, some sad news for race fans here in my local area. The guy solely responsible for getting me bitten with the race bug, Junior Benton, passed away yesterday. And really great guy, and really touched a lot of lives here locally as far as the racing family goes. So, say everybody out there that might be listening from our area, thoughts are with you. He was a great guy, and he wanted the laps to go on, so let's honor this man's life by supporting short track racing, and let's go get him next year.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry for the loss. While we got a second, tell everybody how they can keep up with you on social media, find out what you're doing and everything.
As far as this year goes, or next year goes, I plan on getting back into my media deal. Like I said earlier in the show, my daughter had some issues that we had to get addressed, and had to kind of step away from a while. But definitely going to start dusting the camera off and the camcorder and getting back out there and writing my articles and things like that. So you can check them out on my Facebook. It's Damion Edward Bean, or go to Checkers or Wreckers Race Media. There's some stuff on there. So, I'm looking forward to next year, getting the show going and, having things to talk about. And it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, it is. I think so, too. And it's good meeting you, Damion, and good talking with you. And I'll check in with you next year. That's going to about wrap it up for this episode of Racing with Big Sweat. This is Steve Billmyer. I just wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I'm a redneck. We say Merry Christmas. We aren't into that Happy Holidays stuff.
Amen.
But enjoy yourself over the holidays, and thank you very much for everybody that's listened to us this year, and all the drivers and everybody that's come on the show. I thank you each and every one. I really appreciate the help. And one final note, I wanted to say thank you to my good buddy Chris Yellow Caution Flag Creighton, who's been here by my side through this year's worth of Racing with Big Sweat. And Chris is also a dirt track master from down in Mississippi, and I really enjoyed working and talking with him and learning from him, and I'm going to miss you, Chris. Good luck with everything that's going on with you, bud, and stay in touch. All right, folks, that's it. I'm Big Sweat, and I'm out of here. See ya.
Right now at Kohl's, buy more, save more with your Savings Pass. Take an extra 20% off when you spend $100 or more. Spend under $100 and take an extra 15% off. Use it on top of great gift sale prices, like 40 to 50% off Star Wars apparel, home, and games. Plus, everyone gets $10 Kohl's cash for every $50 spent. Kohl's is now open 24 hours through 6 p.m. Christmas Eve. Kohl's. Select styles, some exclusions apply. Hours may vary by location. See store or kohls.com for details.